And thank you all for joining us today. We're really pleased to have a chance to talk about getting ahead while getting out and reentry issues in general. Dan Jennings is the moderator today, and he'll be tracking things for us. Dan, do you want to say hello and say a little bit about yourself and where you work and what you do?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Jennings. I'm from Hagerman, New Mexico, close by Roswell, New Mexico. Usually people don't know where that is. That's way down south in New Mexico. I had worked for New Mexico Department of Corrections for about 20 years and worked at the Roswell Correctional Center there in my tenure, and had been able to join up with Phil back when NMCD had joined forces with them to bring the Getting Out Well, Getting Ahead curriculum to all 11 facilities in the state.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting adventure, isn't it? Getting everyone in the state doing this. Yeah.
For adult education to try to pivot on that, yes.
Yeah. So we're on track for putting Getting Out in all the prisons in Ohio. There's 28 prisons there, and Alabama. So everything got slowed down because of COVID, for sure. Well, we're going to be, we have a great panel today. We have people that have graduated from Getting Out, they're returned citizens. And so we want to hear their stories and how Getting Out worked for them. And we have people that are facilitators and working in the community. So we want to give you a taste of reentry work that's going on as well. And if we get through this in time, we'll try to leave time for questions at the very end. But you can put questions in the chat, and Dan will be tracking those. So when one person is done talking, he can tell us, what we need to respond to, and we'll try to keep you guys engaged that way. So thanks for being with us. Just a few words about Getting Ahead While Getting Out. I don't know of all the people that are going to be watching this, and it will be recorded and made available to every one of the 1,500 people that registered for this conference, so we don't know when they'll watch it. But Getting Ahead While Getting Out rose out of the earlier book called Getting Ahead and Just Getting By World that was used in the community. And these workbooks are built on the same learning methodology, which means that we facilitate, we don't teach. We sit in rooms of 12 people around a kitchen table. We rely on the wisdom and the insights of the people in the group to advance the learning. And we investigate. People are called investigators, meaning they take responsibility for the learning. And it turns out that it's been very effective in communities, and then you'll be hearing about how it works in prison too. So I don't want to spend a lot of time explaining all the details of Getting Out While Getting Out, but I do need to honor my two co-authors. The book would never have been done without them. I thought that Getting Ahead was working in prisons because it was used in Baton Rouge and the Northeast, Colorado prisons, and in Indianapolis and Marion, Ohio. And I thought, well, if it's working, it's working, Well, I hadn't met Michelle Wood yet. And Michelle Wood is a force. And she was like, I'm a returned citizen, and Getting Ahead helped me. I was already out. But if this had been offered to me in prison, we could tweak it and it would be a better product. It would really work, and we ought to do it. And her ally there is Mitch Lipster, and he's somebody I've known for over 30 years. They live in Marion, Ohio. I live in Marengo, Ohio, so about 25 miles apart. Mitch was a legal aid attorney, and I was running an addiction treatment center, and I don't know how we got to know each other, but so the two of them sort of tackled me about this, and without them it wouldn't have happened. Michelle is an amazing woman. I wish she could be with us today. She's very busy. She's now, of all things, a probation officer for young offenders that are coming out of prison. Just amazing. Mitch is a retired fellow, but I don't know of anyone that has more social capital than Mitch. Now, Marion isn't a big place. It's 40,000 people, and I think Mitch knows everybody. if he doesn't run with you, he plays poker with you, or he plays tennis with you, or he plays bridge with you. I mean, he knows everybody. And when guys come out of prison, and he's met them there doing getting out, they put together a pretty nice reentry program. And Mitch is sort of like one of the key people that's always there to help, always in a very healthy way, you know, and knowing the limits and all those kind of things that go with it. But between the two of them, they built something really good in Marion. And now, of course, they're sharing it with all of you. So I just want to make sure that you remember their names. So we thought today, to help you understand what this is all about, is to talk directly with people that have been through getting out and who have provided it as facilitators. And the method we chose was to what I call a 4-part story. And if you know anything about 12-step meetings, they have sometimes have, this is for recovering alcoholics and addicts, they have lead meetings, and the pattern for storytelling is it's a 3-part story. It's what was it like, what did you do, and what is it like now? It's a very simple pattern, but it really gets across important information. It allows everyone to identify with the speaker when they're talking about what was it like. They're engaging in reminding themselves that they are indeed addicted or alcoholics. And that gets down to ground level base. And then when the person starts talking about, well, what did you do? Then you're hearing about how to work with your sponsor, how to work the steps, and how the person dealt with relationships and so on during their recovery. And that's guidance and help. And then when they say, what is it like now? Then you're getting the hope. You know, if this fellow or this woman has done so well, and this is what's happening, my life can change too. So I just added for our storytellers today, one extra little step. And that is when you say, what was it like in your life and what was going on? And then what did you do? And how was that based on bridges or getting out concepts? So that you and the audience can hear what made the difference in the learning that they did in their group that allowed them to get to their new story, their future story, as we call it, in getting ahead and getting out. So that's a pattern we're going to use. And Carrie Montgomery from Hot Springs, Arkansas, is the person who volunteered to go first. So Carrie, come on and tell us your 4-part story.
Okay. A little bit of nerves, so everybody pray for me. I don't know why, because I've done this several times. And if I go too long, y'all please stop me too, because I'm just going to speak from the heart today, because this is something that I'm very, very passionate about, because it does work. So the first part of my story is life before. I was an addict for 15 years, and those addictions stem from childhood traumas. By the time I had found out about the Getting Ahead program, my life was pretty much, in my eyes, ruined. I had become manipulative. I was a liar. I was a thief. Nobody could trust me. Anybody that cared about me, especially family. I mean, I had just driven those relationships into the ground. I was a criminal, so I had multiple criminal charges. And by the time I went to jail, and I was in and out of jail several times for several years. And after a while, it became more frequent, and every time I went back, it was for longer and longer. So what changes did I make? Whenever I went to the Garland County Detention Center, by the way, I'm a 2016 graduate. Sorry, I left that out, of Getting Ahead while getting out. And I actually took our program in the detention center, not in prison, which I think can also work there as well. I want to advocate for that because a lot of people that are in the detention center are either waiting to go to prison, or they're working themselves to that point. So whenever I sorry, whenever I met my facilitators and started taking that class, I was hopeless. I had no clue what I was doing in life. I had no job. I had nobody that could trust me. I was jobless. I didn't have a car. I didn't have any money. I was stuck. I was in a hole, in a big one. And so through this program, I learned that I was living in the tyranny of the moment. And tyranny of the moment and critical thinking are something that cannot exist together. So anybody that doesn't understand what tyranny of the moment is, my tyranny of the moment came to a point to where I didn't know where I was going to be getting my next meal, where I was going to be taking a shower that day. I was living in a house that wasn't even mine, with no electricity, with no running water. It was a mess. I was a mess. And so I learned through the Getting Ahead program that I had people that did still trust in me and that did still believe in me. And they taught me about setting goals. I'd never set goals for myself ever. So the SMART goals were a huge, huge deal for me. I think the first time that I'd ever done drugs was when I was 15. So most of my adult life, I lived as an addict. I didn't learn about saving money. I didn't learn the importance of having a bank account. I couldn't hold a job, and the ones that I did have, I was late to, or just didn't show up to. So I had no clue about being an adult and living a normal life. So it was almost like I was a brand new person after doing the Getting Ahead program. They taught me how to live. They taught me how to save. They taught me how to think about not just today, but into the future. They taught me how to set SMART goals with sub goals that would play off each other with success, because my first goal was to have a job. After I had a job, I could get a car and a house. And so all the little sub goals for the car and the house stemmed from getting that job and taking those first steps. Also, I learned too, I had a little aha moment the other day, another one, after 4.5 years. I was looking at my shirt in my closet for the Getting Ahead program, and it says, "Trust the process," the slogan for Getting Ahead. And that's one of the main things I believe as an addict is, you've lived that life so long around so many people that you can't trust anybody, or you feel that you can't trust anybody. Well, my facilitators now were not only my social capital, but they were people that I could trust, that I could believe in, that I could call for prayer, for praise, or if I was having a breakdown, or if I needed advice or anything. I had people in my life now that I could trust, and that was something that gave me hope. So when I left the Garland County Detention Center after being a graduate, like I said, I learned how to have that critical thinking. I was in there for 8 months, almost went to prison. When I left, I just still didn't have a job. I still didn't have any money. I didn't have my child. I had a little boy. Luckily, he was with my mom. He was with her for almost 2 years. And I had a 1-year timeline. Super, super huge, and a 72-hour plan. As soon as I walked out of that detention center, I think I called 15 or 20 people just to say, "Hey, I'm out. This is what I'm doing. I'm okay. I'm ready to do this." And my mentor, my Getting Ahead mentor, she was almost more just like a cheerleader. I would meet with her once a week, and she's just saying, "Girl, I don't know what to do for you because you're just doing it. Just you're so amazing." In my 1-year timeline, I crushed it. I crushed it. In 6 months, I was having to make new goals. And so life now, I know this is kind of all over the place. I'm so sorry, but like I said, I'm just so passionate about this, and I'm just so thankful for everything and everybody that's involved in this. And it does work. Now This month, I have 4.5 years clean off drugs. I had a job after 1 month, or after 1 day of being out of the detention center. I had a job, and within a month, I had 3 jobs. I had to choose which one, which one I could stay with. Which I still help them all, but now I'm involved with one. I work for a window production company. I'm a supervisor there. I've been a supervisor for almost 3 years now. Within 3 months, I had my little boy back. I had my own place. I had a car. But before I gained all of this, one of the most important things walking out of that jail was nothing, and I've shared this in other stories before, was that I had hope. Because before I was lost, I was hopeless. I didn't know who I was because I had never been that woman before. And that was the main thing. I had hope, and I had all these amazing getting ahead facilitators, which are still some of my best friends and some of the biggest social capital that I have almost 5 years later now. And life now is nothing like I could have ever imagined it could be. It's so much better. I had no clue that life could be this good. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Carrie. I'd heard your story before, but it's really nice to see your face while you're telling the story too, and hearing it again. Dan, were there any questions that came in or comments that you want to point us towards?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have to say, Carrie, you really got people talking about it. Joe wanted to let you know, thank you very much for sharing your story. Michelle, you're amazing. Sonia, of course, said, great job, Carrie. You give me hope, is what she wanted you to know. Teresa wanted, to let you know, thanks for sharing your story, and God bless. Nancy, trust your example, it gives you hope. And thanks for sharing. And more comments now are starting to roll in. So you really are an inspiration to hear how something like the Getting Ahead While Getting Out program can make a big difference in the lives of somebody who didn't have hope to begin with, and how you can really get your plan going and rolling. So they want to let you know your story is amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks so much. Let's see, we can hear from Sammie. Are you there? We want to hear from you and your story. So are you available? I don't see your picture up there.
I'm here.
All right. Yeah, talk to us.
First of all, how you doing?
Good.
First of all, good morning, everyone. Happy and excited to be here, first of all, and share my experience with you today. Just like Carrie.
Sammie, we're getting just a little bit of rebound with your audio. Maybe if you can just pick your phone up just a little bit, maybe. Sorry, just kind of bouncing back a little bit.
How's that?
I think that's a little bit better. Let's try again. Sorry about that.
How's that sound? That sound a little better?
Not quite.
Not yet. Any other advice, Elizabeth, or anyone else that has ideas on?
And you're on your phone? It was yes. A little bit better before, so I'm not sure if are you in a different room than earlier?
No, I'm in the same room.
Same room, oh.
Same room.
What we had to do the other day was turn off the video.
Okay.
Try that, Sammie.
Okay.
I really apologize.
Well, we want to hear Sammie, so it's worth it if we can get it to work. I thought when we were talking earlier, we could hear him real clearly, so I don't know what changed.
Yeah, it was great before. I don't know if it's an internet connection, it possibly.
Okay, let's try again, Sammie, now that you've turned your camera off. Are you there?
Might have an internet connection. Maybe we can get back to Sammie in a minute, unless Ray wants to speak.
Okay.
Well, why don't you go to Tomas and we'll see if Sammie comes back on.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, Tomas, are you there? Hello.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Better. All right.
Please go ahead and tell us your story.
All right. Well, I'm Tomas. I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's where I currently reside. When I was young, even now, I've lived a mostly middle-class life, right? My mom was a single mom, worked hard to provide everything for my brother and I. And so poverty and poor and not having weren't things that we were accustomed to, right? And so living that lifestyle of always getting what you want, essentially, kind of just led me down a path of poor decision making all through school and beyond school, right? I got kicked out of high school, left college after 1 week, got addicted to alcohol and drugs and, ended up in prison, right? The judge gave me a chance. I blew that, ended up in prison, did about between 3.5 and 4 years in prison. Been out of prison now 14 whole days. So thanks for having me. But during my time in prison, right, is where I met Dan. I spent my entire time at the Roswell Correctional Center where I met Dan. That is so weird to say Dan, where I met Mr. Jennings. And, when I started there, I started working in the education department where Mr. Jennings or Dan worked. And we were looking for ways to bring hope and inspiration and help to the inmates that didn't have it as good as I did, right? And as we looked around the facility, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for a lot of guys to do things with their lives. And so we, with Dan and his supervisor, they really worked on getting ahead into the facility. And once it came into the facility, I was able to go through kind of the first class, as with Dan as a facilitator, with a few other of our soon-to-be peer mentors in the facility. Through getting ahead, I've learned a lot of things. The biggest thing is, if you don't know that a problem exists, then you can't fix it, right? And like I said, for me, poverty wasn't a thing until I knew it was a thing, right? When we were growing up, poverty was the homeless person on the corner, right? And how do we solve that? I don't know, not in my backyard. It's not my problem. That's why I pay taxes, right? You figure it out. And going through this experience in prison really made me understand that poverty is a much bigger issue than the homeless guy on the corner, right? There's people that live in poverty every day that you would never know, right? And one story that really hit me through getting ahead is this guy named Isaac Garza, right? He's still at the Roswell Correctional Center for the second time. His story to me was really touching, and that's why getting ahead is so important to me. Isaac came from nothing. Single mom. His mom was a drug addict, alcoholic, was in and out of relationships with numerous guys. Grew up, him and his sister, essentially homeless. He got into the gang life and, got stabbed in the neck. He's been shot several times. He's been homeless. He's all kinds of things, right? And no support from anybody around. He ends up in prison. That's where I meet him, right? Does his time, 18, 20 months, something like that. Gets ready to get out. And as he's getting out of prison, still no support, right? Here's a $50 check. I'm going to call it a fake ID, essentially an ID you can't use anywhere in society, and a trash bag with some stuff and a bus ticket to a halfway house 589 miles from his hometown, and a good luck, right? Poor Isaac, on his way to the halfway house, has to take a bus trip. That's not a one-way trip or a direct route, right? He goes from Roswell to Las Cruces. For those of you that may know New Mexico, that's a 200-mile bus ride. He had a 17-hour layover in Las Cruces. He was sleeping on a bus bench because he had no place to go, no money, no hotel room, nothing like that. The next day, takes a bus from Las Cruces to Albuquerque, gets stuck in Albuquerque and misses his connecting bus to Farmington. So now he's in a big city. He's never been in a big city before, right? Albuquerque, for us in New Mexico, is a big city, right? So big city in Albuquerque, down in the bus station, people, he's running into people that he met in prison that are already back addicted to drugs, that are already committing more crime, that are already doing things, right? And by God's blessing, he had the self-discipline to tell those guys no in Albuquerque, he could have gotten himself into immediate trouble right then and there, right? Ends up finding a way to cash his check, ends up getting a hotel room that night, right? And through all of this, he hasn't eaten, he hasn't had anything to drink, he's got an ankle monitor on, so
Whoa.
Looks like we might have lost Tomas as well. Got some internet connection going on today, I think.
Yeah. Well, he'll certainly be trying to get back on. What about Sammie?
We also lost Sammie. I think he might have lost his internet and he disappeared. I'm waiting for him to come back. So
Okay.
it's up to you who wants to go next.
Sure.
If you want me to, I can pop into the last of that story, so it's not so much of a cliffhanger, I think.
Yeah.
So, because this was also one of my students that I had worked with there as well. But Tomas tells the story because the problem is, before the idea of having the Getting Ahead While Getting Out program, everything was basically dependent upon a caseworker making all of these plans for you. So if you're an inmate, you basically just spent your days while you were incarcerated until your caseworker came out and said, okay, here's the plan, here's your bus ticket, this is what's going to happen. And just as Tomas had said, in good luck. And so now Tomas is back on, so he might be able to finish the story that happened on that. So perfect.
Thanks for stepping in there, Dan. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
yeah, it kicked me out for some reason. So anyway, so the parole officer tells him, no, right, you're not going to go see your dying mom. And so, like probably any good son would do, me included, right, he cut his ankle monitor and he went to see his mom. Spends a week with his mom, calls the cops, turns himself in, ends up back in prison, where I saw him for the second time, right? And so it's stories like that that really have gotten me to really think about my life and examine who I am and where I want to go with my life, right? And for me, mentorship, you know, is a huge thing that we started to really discover through Getting Ahead, you know, in our programs. And, you know, I've learned so much from the guys that society says have nothing. And I've learned so much from the guys that are struggling because they are really true problem solvers, right? And in our, you know, in the things that we discuss, we'd like to call, you know, those guys are entrepreneurs, right? As entrepreneurs are nothing but problem solvers, and people in poverty are nothing but problem solvers. They have to live in the here and now. They have to solve today's problem. They have to eat. They have to put food over their head. And so for me, you know, it's really important that those things be known, even to those of us who are lucky enough to have had the support while we were in prison, right? I was lucky enough to come home to my house. You know, my family went way out of their way to make sure that I still had my home when I got out of prison, to make sure that I had my clothes when I got out of prison, right? To make sure I had a vehicle. And these guys that don't have those things, it's really, really important to me to make sure that we find ways through Getting Ahead, through the 72-hour plans, you know, the midterm plan, the long-term plans, you know, to make sure that they can get past that concrete thinking and past that tyranny of the moment and past, you know, all of those things. And we can move into the abstract thinking and we can plan for the future and we can build the resources necessary for those guys to succeed, right? And for us, it's the handout is such an issue for me personally. You know, this is my opinion. I know Getting Ahead talks about hands up versus hands out, right? And in our state, right, I'm not going to say everything, but most everything in our state is a handout, right? You know, New Mexico has what, 19.8% poverty rate, worst poverty rate in America, right? 700,000 people on Medicaid. It's hands out, right? And instead of worrying about how do we help these people succeed, we're worried about how do we find more tax money to give to these people and just call it good, say we've done our part, right? And that's not correct. You know, and then it becomes even worse for our guys that are incarcerated because not only are they living in poverty, now they have a record and now they're coming out 9 times out of 10 worse off than they went in, right? No resources, nowhere to go. They don't know who to call. They don't have a phone to call, And so for us, it's really important to take those 11 resource areas in getting ahead and say, how do we find people that are solving these issues in these 11 resource areas and make that known to the guys and connect our guys to those resources prior to them even getting out of prison, right? So they've already made contact with those people and they already have, they know who they're going to. They have case managers in every department that they need. They have a cell phone. They have a debit card. They have food to eat on their first day out. They have a mentor that's going to pick them up at the prison so they don't have to take the bus, right? And so those are all things that we've discovered through getting ahead. And those are all things that we want to continue working on in the future. You know, and that's really, it's really inspired me to see those guys that struggle really want to do better. And if they want to do better, then I want to help them do better. Now that I'm out of prison, you know, that's basically my current life's mission at this point, is to, you know, make sure that these guys that are coming out behind me don't experience the same things that Isaac experienced, you know, some of the things that I've experienced, and that their transition back into society, or the restoration into society. I don't like the term reentry, but the term restoration for me is a good one. You know, the restoration back into society is a much smoother, much more cohesive transition than it currently is. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you so much. You really make some really great points. Dan, are there questions in the chat?
Yeah, I'll hit one of the questions. I'm just going to give Tomas some of the things that people have been saying about it. As Sonia wanted to let you know, so right. Thanks for seeing the talent and the ability of those with less. Some of the good, I didn't know police was a thing until I knew it was a thing. And that's a very powerful quote, a very powerful statement. Hands out equals dependency, and getting ahead leads to independence. And how can we, Starla said, how can we help others help themselves? We need our communities to adopt the Bridges model. So true. And thanks for your passion and help others in transition, Tomas. One of the questions was, it was just during the time that you had left, was, so Isaac had gotten to the bus station, got a hotel, and then the next part of the story was that he had to go see his dying mother. So there was something in the middle that just got left out. So if you could hit that one right in between there.
Yeah, real quick. So he got his hotel. He woke up the next morning, headed back down to the bus station, had missed the bus, of course. It had left at the wrong time or something. I'm not too sure what happened. Was able to borrow a cell phone from the lady that worked at the bus station, called the halfway house. The halfway house, I guess, decided it was in his best interest that they drive the 200 and some odd miles down from the town he was going to in northwestern New Mexico and just pick him up at the bus station. So finally he ended up getting picked up downtown by the actual halfway house, and then ended up, you know, at the halfway house. So
I was interested in your saying that you didn't like the word reentry, but you preferred, was it a restoration? Was that the word you used?
That's correct. Restoration, or restoration. For us, you know, we talk a lot about restorative justice, right? And what does restorative justice look like in our community? And, you know, a lot of times, you know, people that have committed crimes or allegedly committed crimes can't, you know, make restoration with their victims or their alleged victims, but they can make restoration in their communities, right? Yeah. So they can do good in their communities getting out of prison. And for us, that's kind of restorative justice, right? I don't know if you want to hear this, but one activity that we did in the prison, at least recently, through the Getting Ahead books, is I would have our students, every time they saw the word reentry in any book, whether it's a Getting Ahead book, another reentry program that they were teaching, anything like that, get out a pen, cross out the word reentry, and write restoration. And we did that in all the books, because it's a mindset, right? If I'm reentering into the life that I lived, then I'm just going to keep living the life that I lived. If I'm going to have restorative justice, then I'll be better in my community.
You really make a good point. I think you convinced me.
Good.
We're going to have to, we just worked on our 4th edition of Getting Out, but that doesn't mean we can't, you know, make a note and make that change. I really like that. I really like that concept a lot.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for what you're doing. So what's next for you?
For me, I'm going to work for a organization, a nonprofit called Christian Counseling Professionals. I'm going to go do some peer support work with some individuals there, and do a lot of program management. One of the guys that we met in prison, actually, Rudy Chavez, is now one of my closest advisors, mentors. He's a program director of a peer support program there. So I'm going to go do a lot of back end stuff for him. He's kind of struggling building, foundations and things like that. He really loves working with people, and, I really want to help him help people. So that's kind of where I'm headed. And then once I get that situated and get my foundation, get a steady paycheck, then Dan and I were going to really start working on hitting the ground running with some of this, reaching back into the prison from the outside through getting ahead, or getting out, and some other initiatives that we're working on. So,
wow. Really, I wish the best for you. And I hope you'll stay in touch with us.
Oh, absolutely.
Part of our learning community, because this is how things happen. We all learn from each other. This is just great. This whole initiative, you call it restoration initiative, is like the Wild Wild West, in my opinion. Very weird things happen. And the technology or the knowledge base has not been established as to what is effective, what isn't effective. So there's really weird stuff going on, and we want to be part of making things better.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. We need to find out what happened. Ray, did you get any information about what happened with Sammie?
Yes, he lost his Wi-Fi at his house, and I suggested he call one of the numbers that Ruth had sent him so that he can call in, and you'll just see his name, but he'll be able to talk then.
Can we have him now?
I don't see him on here just yet.
Okay. Well, let's see. While we're waiting on him, and hope that he can come in, I know Ray, you're ready to answer and tell his story in case this happened. Do you want to step up and go like, okay, I'm going to start telling Sammie's story? Do you want to wait and see if he comes on?
Is Dan finished his portion?
Well, Dan, we can turn to you.
I don't mind going and kind of following up with Tomas, and then we'll pop over to Ray or Sammie if he comes back on.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'll kind of go a little bit about how this was from the facilitation aspect when we got started. And some of you might have heard when you first came into the room, but I worked in New Mexico Department of Corrections for 20 years and just recently have separated and retired from there. And so what I got to see along the way was a complete change in the culture at our facility as it started to move in a different direction, especially with the inmates there after bringing this on. And the reason why we wanted to bring this on at NMCD was the fact that we work in adult education and providing GED preparation services. And of course, we found that the GED was just not it when it came to stopping recidivism. And that was kind of our only tool that we had in our toolbox was get your GED and you won't ever come back to prison. And that's silly. That is not what is going to keep somebody out. What really is going to keep people out coming back in is the fact that can you analyze your life? Can you see the things that you need to work on? And can you restore those areas? So that was the big thing for us, and that's the reason why Getting Out While Getting Ahead was the program that we really wanted to adopt throughout the state to make this change. We loved it because it wasn't something where it would be, for example, me standing in front of the classroom and telling you, this is what you're wrong in your life and here's what you've got to do to fix it, because that was the way that all the other reentry programs are designed, was let's start with what your problem is and let's tell you what your problem is, and now you have to figure that out, and here's a list of things that you might look to do, and so you'll never come back to prison. And again, that was ridiculous. So the whole idea of Getting Out While Getting Ahead is, as Phil said, sit around the table. And, you know, I'm not the expert on this. All I can do is help guide and facilitate discussions on this. And we found that we didn't have a lot of ability in the staff to carry this out to fruition because they're too busy working on prepping for the GED. So as we started to move through the program at RCC, what we did was to incorporate the participants who had gone through, the investigators that went through the program, to turn back around and be the leaders of the next group. And so just the same way as Carrie's facilitating groups, correct, Carrie? I think you had mentioned that you're facilitating some groups yourself. We found that it was the best for somebody that had gone through it to actually do the facilitation. Is that right, Carrie?
Yes, yes, and it's amazing too to facilitate after you've been a graduate, because I continue to have aha moments right along with them. It's an ongoing process. It's absolutely amazing.
That's 100% right. That was the thing that we found was we could have all of our staff go through this to some degree of fidelity, but it sounded much better for us to build the mentorship and the leadership in our facilitators that came right from the ground roots. So our inmates became the facilitators and carried that through. This is what I started to notice was the difference in the culture at the facility. Whereas we found that before, it was like an inmate would just be like, I'm here, I'm just going to do my time, and then I'm going to wait for somebody to tell me what I do next, and then I'm going to get out, and I guess somebody out there is going to tell me what I'm going to do next. We found that our inmates wanted to make a change in the community, and in the community meant at the prison. They started to build this entire club model around mentorship and finding that these were resource areas that our individuals that were going through the classes were lacking in. So what do we need to do? We need to create some classes designed around that. Financial literacy was a big one that came up. How to handle anger or emotional issues. So we started stoicism. There were all these different things that started to grow from the grassroots, and all of these classes, parenting classes and such, started to come in from inmates, meaning they were the ones leading those classes themselves. So it was great as a staff member, as a teacher, to like step aside and watch this cadre of individuals grow and make a change in their community and understand the language, the 3 different languages from the different classes related to the individuals in a facility. So learning how to code switch between those so that they could still be code switch, move up to kind of a middle class working with administration and then all the way up to security. They understood that they needed to do this when they get out on the outside too. So starting that inside the prison system, starting that mentorship and becoming this model led them, as soon as they started to move out, just as Tomas said, Rudy Chavez gets out and immediately gets a job working with other individuals and being a peer support worker. Amazing pathway to then go in to become a certified peer support worker, and now can work and work with individuals who are struggling on the outside. And that's the reason why we want to send as many people into those programs, so that now we have end-to-end support, reach in, back into mentorship into the facilities and help out with that. Carrie said hope. It's all about hope. And our organization's name is Hope for Tomorrow, because that's what it's all about. It's like, how do we provide hope for others for tomorrow? And so after retiring, it was like time. So we couldn't do a lot of work on the inside anymore. It's time to now start work on the outside and reach back in. So that's kind of our entire story from kind of start to finish there.
Boy, that's a beautiful story. The prison system, or the key players in it, must be receptive.
The individuals who are incarcerated definitely are.
Okay. Well, so what about the folks that are running the show?
I'm retired now. So I will be very kind as much as I can be. I believe that it is a complete mind shift change that needs to happen in the administration world. Again, the mindset is that it's all reentry is pretty much just what Tomas described, is that a couple of days or weeks ahead of your release, they're going to come to you and say, okay, here's your bus ticket, here's your gate money, and sign out, and good luck to you. And then probation parole will take over after that, which they're not taking over after that. They're just make sure that you're going to follow the rules of probation parole, but they're not there to help you when you're stuck, when you need assistance. So therefore, the whole thing we need to do is empower the individual to solve their own problems and to create these long-term and short-term plans. That's a very difficult mindset for those in administration to get mind around, because when you've been trained as a staff member for so long, it's your job to take care of the inmate, which when you have a caseload of hundreds, you can't do that. So you're not able to do what you're supposed to do, what your policy is supposed to do. it's kind of like you need to rely on some others in the community to do this, and to have a little bit of faith in the individual to go through it, but to empower them to do so. So I'm going to say that it's going to be an uphill struggle, as it has been for the last several years, to make that mind shift change from the top down or the bottom up. But I think that we're dedicated to making any inroads, whatever it's taking, so that we can, with the support of others that are in those positions, or just doing this kind of on our own.
Well, I think that you know, you're making a really realistic assessment of the situation, and it's a barrier that all of us face. And so you're part of learning communities, and happily you're part of this learning community, and all of us can be, you know, working towards that end, right? So yeah, I mean, reentry, as you were describing it, is what everyone's doing across the country, right? There might be a few bright spots here and there, but I think that issue is one that we should all kind of put our minds to.
Well, Phil, this is the reason why I'm happy that we're involved in this, because it's because of getting people trained in Bridges communities, getting people trained in getting ahead and getting out is the only way that this is going to take place. And that's what makes the mind shift. That's what happens. So it really requires all of us to pound as much as we can on people that are in positions of power to get behind this framework and this model.
Yeah. I hope somebody caught that phrase. I think he said, pound to the people in power.
Okay, maybe not, because this is recorded and I just don't need anything on the record. So yes.
Yeah, having a record's not fun.
I don't need to experience it from the inside now.
Yeah, no, you don't need that. Trust me.
Okay, Ray, what have you found out? What's happening with Sammie?
Sammie lost the entire cable Wi-Fi to his house, so the TV doesn't work. They lost their phones. They lost all their connectivity. So they got a guy coming out, but I doubt if he's going to get back in. Now, I did talk to him on the phone, so he's going to try and call into the number that Ruth gave him.
Okay.
So that at least he could, but he said it wasn't letting him in.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the time, and we're on for another about half an hour. Elizabeth, is that right? We have about half an hour.
Correct.
So,
Want me to take his spot?
well, what we can do is, you know, you're working on reentry issues a lot, and I'm sure you were listening to what Dan was saying, and you're working hard at your approach there in Florida. Do you want to talk about being a facilitator and, you know, your thoughts on reentry, or I think our word should be restoration? But do you want to talk about that a little bit? And we'll give Sammie a chance to still get on.
Okay, yeah, that'll be good. Yeah, okay. I envy you guys, because Florida, we're the third largest prison population. I think Texas and California are ahead of us. We've got, I want to say 76 prisons in Florida. So it's, you know, even Ohio with 28, that's almost doable. We have made some inroads. What we started because I was working with the classification, the release officers, and, you know, we'd have a guy, especially I was working with veterans at the time, and we'd have a guy and they'd give me a call and they'd say, you know, John's getting out Friday and we don't have any place to send him. Probation didn't accept the place he was supposed to go. You know, what can we do? And we were always jumping, you know, through hoops at the last minute. And that's why when I ran into Phil at a meeting and with St. Vincent de Paul, and I listened to what they were doing with getting ahead and then getting ahead while getting out. And I said, this has got to be better than what we're currently doing. And so we started in 2017, and we got, it took us, we started in 2015. It took us 2 years to get it approved as an elective, and just at Zephyr Hills Correctional. And then we got it as across the state, And now just this last year, just before COVID, it was put in as part of the core curriculum. So now anybody that wants to do it in a state prison can do it, can run it. But they don't have to go through it, very much paperwork at all. And all it takes is the local warden to approve it. So that's a step in the right direction. But geez, we've got about 5,000 guys get out a year, 5,000 people from the state prison system. And I'm working with Zephyr Hills Correctional, which has maybe 25 or 30 get out a year. And so, you know, if we were hoping to do 2 classes, maybe 3 classes, and we had trained some facilitators to do that. And then COVID hit. So we haven't ramped up at all, but I was lucky enough to get a grant from the Tampa Bay Lightning, who have last night tied the Dallas Stars for the cup. And so they gave us a grant of $50,000 to different organizations that support restoration. And so that was a big help. We've just used all that money, and we put in for some more St. Vincent de Paul grants. And I saw in the chat room that some people were asking about St. Vincent de Paul and the immersion program. If you go to the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and they're one of the few organizations that doesn't mind helping sex offenders. You'll find some organizations that will help veterans or certain people, nonviolent offenders, but they're the one organization I've found that actually likes to help sex offenders. So they have an immersion program, and they're setting up in different states, and they got a larger grant, and they're setting up like transition housing. And I'm just sending one of my guys from Zephyr Hills is going to the immersion transitional housing in Orlando, and that's this Thursday he gets out. So we're going to see how that works. But yeah, that's St. Vincent de Paul and the Vietnam Veterans of America were the organizations that really helped us in getting going at Zephyr Hills. So we currently try to help guys that are getting out with the, like Tomas said, with the $50 debit card that they can't really use at a bus station. So we get them a Visa card that they can use to get food while they're on that long bus trip to someplace, especially out of state. And then we help them with like clothes, work boots, work gloves, anything they need in that way. And then we help them, especially since we've been getting the grants, we help them with like the first month's rent at a halfway house or a transition housing. And like I kind of envy Dan because his guys seem to be all near him. He's talking about, his guys, where he gets to meet with them and stuff. And my guys are scattered all over Florida. So Sammie is actually the closest guy to me, and he's like an hour and a half away. So we've had, so it's good if you could set it up to where you're together. Now, what Carrie said about the jails, detention centers at the county or local, those guys generally stay in their area. So you could, if you started this in a jail setting, you could probably continue to help them and to meet with them when they got out. So that's, and it's a little different between prison and jail. And in jail, there's a lot of angst because they don't know what's going to happen to them, a lot of them. Whereas my guys, they were in for 10 years. They know what's, they've already internalized the fact that they're in prison, and have been for a while. So I think just the planning process too, because there's so much angst when these guys are getting out, especially after 10 or 20 years, and they're afraid of technology and they don't know what's going to happen. And you can put together, you know, not, we don't put it together, but they put together their plan. And I think that helps, you know, they have something then they can, that's tangible that they can worry about, you know, so that it goes, you know, from the abstract to the concrete, and they can do that. And then they're not in that tyranny of the moment that Carrie talked about, where it's really, really hard to make decisions when you've got all these things going on, and you're getting out Friday and you don't know where you're going, and you know, and you make bad decisions, like Tomas said, you know, the guy in the bus station. You know, it's just so easy to get back in a gang, or there's a lot of money in drugs, and so, you know, it's really, really hard when they get out, but it's very rewarding. If you've never, you know, if you've never been involved in prison ministry, and in helping guys, you know, in restoration, it's very rewarding, and they're so thankful, and they're, you know, and it doesn't take much to make them happy. And now, Sammie, part of what Sammie was going to say, I'm going to steal part of his thunder. He was concerned, or he said that when they first met, that they were restrained and they didn't want to share too much at the first, you know, 2 meetings. And I was amazed, because, you know, I've been doing prison ministry before, and if you don't know somebody, you don't say anything. You know, talk about the weather, you know, because, you know, you don't want to give away anything. And I was really amazed at how much they shared in that first meeting. And he thought that they were, you know, pretty, you know, close hold with it all. I thought that was amazing. We had different takes on that first 2 meetings, but the classes are so well received, because, well, in Florida, there's nothing else going on. There's a reentry program that's not very good. It's a canned course. It's the answers, they give you the answers. You have to fill out the thing. You know, you're supposed to read the thing and then fill out the thing, but, you know, and turn it in. But there's, you know, there's no interface. There's no individuality. And there's really no planning process. You know, it was more to, I think, to get people to not want to be criminals than to help them, you know, when they got out.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's really interesting insights, and sort of certain themes keep coming up, you know. Dan, what are you seeing in the chat?
I'm keeping a couple of things out here on this because a couple of questions have come in. Jacqueline did want to know about how long would a county inmate need to be incarcerated to complete the program. And so if you wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how that could be done on kind of a shorter basis, because in prison, you know, we have years, whereas county detentions, you have a shorter amount of time.
In our county detention center here, here in Garland County in Arkansas, we have a state-of-the-art new facility, and anybody that walks into it, it is almost like a prison. You know, everything is automated. You know, you've got to push buttons, they open doors from a control room. And so we're very lucky in our county as well to have a judicial system that very firmly believes and understands the psychology between addiction and what is causing that to raise the crime rate in our cities. And so they really, really have a heart for helping people get better, all the way from the judges to the captain of the jail to the sheriff. And so we have an amazing set of programs at our detention center. So our program, when we do getting ahead while getting out, is usually about 12 weeks. And we have a little bit longer time slot with them, usually 2 to 2.5 hours. And correct me if I'm wrong in this, Starla. She's in our chat. She's my facilitator, Starla Blyfus, amazing lady. And so that allows us to do a little bit more than one chapter while we're in there with them. And so since we do have shorter time period with them, since they're in the detention center versus the prison, we try to do our setup in 12 weeks.
I could just say real quick, if you don't mind. In New Mexico, in our 33 counties, I think we've got 1 or 2 decent facilities like Carrie is explaining there in Arkansas. Here in Albuquerque, of course, the big one, which is actually the second largest correctional facility in the state. And then, you know, the surrounding counties immediately next to Albuquerque, because that's where the population is. And in my experiences, it's really difficult to do any programming in the county jails here because everything is 23-hour a day, pretty much locked down all the time, no matter who you are or where you're at, because of the classification system and because of our judiciary here in New Mexico is completely different than what Carrie is explaining in Arkansas. I mean, we don't get really long sentences, but in the county jail, things are a whole lot different. So programming for us is really, really difficult to do in any county jail across our state. So.
Yeah, I get the picture that things really vary state by state, you know.
And actually, that does lead one of the questions was getting into the facilities. Joe had asked this, meeting the powers that be. Does anybody have any recommendations of how to make that kind of an inroad?
In New Mexico, and something that we had been working on, or we had talked about a lot, Dan and I and some other people, is, and kind of like Ray talked about, is through prison ministry and is through our faith coordinator in New Mexico. And in our experiences, it seems that the faith community and our faith coordinator and our volunteer services coordinator are the same lady. And it seems to be much more receptive and much more, the chances of you figuring it out through the faith-based coordinator in your state is probably the easiest way to do it for us. Like Dan talked about, our administration outside of the faith aspect of things is kind of reluctant at the moment to do anything different than they're doing. So faith is the way to get into the prisons, I believe.
Yes, I agree. That's the best way, is to understand the chaplain. And in fact, our chaplain used to be able to approve visitors. That changed about 3 years ago. It moved up to the assistant warden. But yeah, that through the chaplain, and then the chapel system is good. Or if you have a veterans group that meets, they can also be effective.
I'm thinking about people in different states that I know that work, and I agree the faith-based ones are the route to go in most easily. I've also had a pretty nice encounter with a woman named Anna Bauman, and she's a consultant to prison systems and the like. And so she recommended getting ahead while getting out for all the women's prisons in Alabama. And then things went really well. So then it was going to be provided to all the men's prisons in Alabama too. And she was, the consultant that people listen to. So I think that if you, she would be receptive to talking. I think we could go to her and say, you know, we have access to somebody in Ohio, or name your state, that might listen to you on these ideas of using this methodology. She would probably help open doors. I mean, she's that positive about it. So every now and then you run across someone like her who has influence and position and access and knowledge all in one person. But yeah, those are really broad issues about how to get in and then how to do it effectively when you do get in, right? So if you have a staff that is just swamped or doesn't really buy into these ideas, that it's not a fertile place for this to go, is it? Right? So there has to be sort of these different combinations of having it click with certain people, getting them exposed to Bridges' ideas and those kind of concepts so that they're receptive. It's a climb. And yet it's some places.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say a couple of suggestions have come in from the chat room to say, send out the white paper, for example, and invite them to a tactical communications training, or attending one of the Getting Ahead presentations or recorded webinars could be ways to make inroads. And Vicky's saying that she'd like to send out the white paper in this recorded session, for example, to the people that are out there, sheriff, police, and such.
Okay.
And so kind of questions of like, where is this white paper? And so maybe that might be
I'll make a note to send it to everyone that's on this, right? So anyone that attends here, we can take a look at the chat and see whose names are on there. We can send the white paper to everybody.
Phil, if I could just take a quick second, what I found very shortly, we're right now in turmoil across the nation. And I mean, we can't mince words. We're having racial disparity where people are dying. But what I find when I train in bridges, tactical communication, getting ahead, it all comes down to speaking about what's going on without saying the words that create the controversy. So the last class I had a group of African Americans come up and say, "Are you talking about race?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm actually talking about socioeconomic class." So what I find, I live in a very, very wealthy community, and race to right-wing conservatives is kind of a scary topic, but I can talk about socioeconomic class and begin to open hearts, minds, and the layers so I can get to those meaty root cause conversations. So again, I suggest sending out the white paper. That's exactly in a nutshell what it's going to help you begin to see and do and bring people together, because just the world's language right now just pits controversy. So this is a very effective tool for you.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. Yeah, that's, it turns out to be kind of ironic that speaking about class is acceptable. That's nice. It gets us in the door. And it seems to have worked in the, we named the cities where it's been working. So when you get the story directly from the people who've used it in the white paper. What do you think?
Other questions was Patrice and Vicky had some comments and questions about, for example, a halfway house director told me that she isn't sure if her residents would commit to 12 to 16 session suggestions. And so maybe this would come from like Carrie. This would be a great one to say, like, what did you have any apprehension about signing up for 12, 16 sessions, or how would you get people to join?
Now, Starla did correct me on the timeline on our sessions. So whenever I did the class and whenever they're facilitating their classes, they do twice a week for 7 weeks, and that kind of shortens the span. So maybe if you can meet more than once a week, that could help. Whenever I started to facilitate, I actually got a class of 309s, and I'm not sure if everybody in every state has 309s, but in Arkansas, those are inmates from the prisons that have done well, and they are allowed to travel to the county jails and work the remainder of their sentence. And so like they get to go on shopping trips to Walmart on Thursdays, they get to see their family, they get home cooked meals. So I was lucky enough to actually get to teach prison inmates in the detention center. And so my class with them was going to be 12 weeks because I thought I had them for that amount of time. But the sad thing about that class was we needed more room for regular inmates in the Garland County Detention Center, and so we had to disperse our 309 program. But I would think, if the halfway house director has time to do more than one class a week, that could shorten the time to graduation and to getting everything in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think for us, if I may, again, sorry,
Sure.
we, 12 to 16 weeks, sure. We've done a lot of different things. We've done once a week, and we've done twice a week, in times of dire need. We've even done 3 times a week, so it really just depends on, like Carrie said, kind of what the halfway house director is capable of doing. I think to me, the time span, 12 to 16 weeks isn't necessarily the most important thing. The most important thing is that, the participants are understanding the material. They really understand, what the book is saying. They've really made those plans. They really know where they're trying to go, and if it takes them, 3 weeks to do that or 4 weeks to do that, then fine. If it takes them 16 to 20, 24 weeks, fine also. It all really depends on what the halfway house director can do in this case, what the students are capable of doing, and, understanding the knowledge and being able to have those really meaningful conversations.
I'm good with that. I'm the one that kind of goes like, well, it shouldn't be more than twice a week, but we have to fit it in the way it's going to work, and so if you have people for a short time, you're going to do the best you can. Ray, we should probably, we don't have much time left, but we should hear Sammie's story. Can you, I know you're prepared to kind of share his story with us, so could you do that? And we'll take the rest of our time to hear that, so we can.
Okay.
did.
Yeah, Sammie, he's a career criminal, and I was amazed when he told me that. But he was no, not into drugs and stuff, but mostly theft. And he got in, asked to be in our class, and he was the Toastmasters club. He's part of that. He was exceptional. He was our secretary, so he did our artwork, for all the models, and did that for us. He what his plans for getting out, he got to go to a halfway house that was set up by the release officer, and we did take him to Walmart, and he got a job. He was doing really well. He was a cook at Five Guys. He had a little room in his boss's house that he rented, and so he was never late for work. And so that seemed to be working out real well. And then his girlfriend dropped off his 7-year-old daughter to him and said, "I've been watching her, and she's yours now." And it broke his heart. He couldn't have her stay there with him in that little one room. He took her to his aunt's house, got her to take care of her. He used his rent money to give to his aunt to take care of his daughter. So he couldn't stay in that room anymore. And the sheriff came and inspected it, and he wasn't there. And so it was a technical violation of his release. And so he had to go back in for another 5 months. So he just got out this June the second time. And it was a technical violation. He, wasn't doing drugs, wasn't, stealing anything. It's just, he wasn't where he was supposed to be. He came back, he got out this time. And we had a little excitement when he got out, but we got into his appointment with his probation officer. We got him, he got a job out of where they had placed him. He's now finished with parole, or well, not parole, but probation. He can leave the county. He's got a job with cutting trees with a tree maintenance firm. And so he goes to Orlando and different places to cut down trees. It's really hot in Florida in the summertime to be cutting trees. And he's stuck with it. So I'm really proud of him for doing that. He's got a nice place to stay now. He had Wi-Fi. It seemed to be working on the Wi-Fi and stuff. We could link up with him. Sorry about that. And so his one word for getting ahead while getting out was safe haven. He felt it was a safe place for him to share those things, to make the friends, the people that were around the kitchen table, they still keep in touch. They still call each other. And he just felt that was a safe haven for him, that going to the classes and then, getting out and knowing I was his sponsor. And we really haven't given him that much support. I mean, money-wise, because he has a job and he's doing that. We've given him some advice and helped him in some rough spots. But yeah, I'm very proud of Sammie. He was able to go with me to the Lightning game when I got the award, and he was able to be there with me when we did that. And so he's I think he's really going to make it.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sorry we didn't get to hear from him, but it's good to hear from you and get part of the story. So tell him thanks. tell him we're sorry that he couldn't be on the whole time with us. But hey, we're part of a big learning community now, right? And that's my thing these days, is that we've been doing this long enough to take all the lessons that we've been talking about here today. And we've all gotten ideas from this conversation. I certainly have. The need is really huge, and there's, if you think about it, very few of us really doing this, but we need to be thinking a bit more strategically and systemically so we can do more and have a bigger impact. I mean, we know that it's working. We know the process that's involved, but we can learn a lot from these kind of conversations. And this is an invitation for us to kind of be a bit more intentional about what we're doing about restoration. That Tomas's word is sticking with us all now, isn't it? So I want to thank you all. We have just a minute. So we said, well, what is one word that you would attach to this work? And his word was safe haven. What about you, Ray? What's your word? Then we'll ask Dan and Carrie and Tomas. What's the one word you would give to it?
Oh, future story.
Okay. Yeah. Dan?
Mine's hope. I'm sorry, Carrie, if that was yours. If it is, I'll change mine.
No, you're good.
Hope's a big one. What about you, Carrie?
Mine was altering, life altering.
Okay. Yeah. Tomas? His mic.
His audio went out.
There it is. Yeah, I think I agree with kind of Dan and Carrie, right? Hope for sure. That's what we hope for tomorrow. And then, again, like I said, life changing, I didn't know until I knew, and it's completely changed my outlook on life. It's completely changed my outlook on the people I see on the street corner when I'm driving through town, just knowing how lucky I am to not have to live that way and to be able to make the change to help those that do have to live that way. So.
Well, thank you all for being part of this panel. I think it's going to be a great thing for people to watch. We've recorded it. Make sure people get a chance to know about that, spread the word. And we'll be in touch. We need to keep working on this together. So thank you all very much for this effort. And hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Go.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you all at the closing general session.
Yeah.